Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope you're all doing well today. I've got another video for you. We're going to be talking about the comparison analysis of the 1918 Spnsh Fu. I gotta talk this way so that I don't get deleted again for trying to explain all of these truths to everybody. Comparison with Cvd19. Again, gotta speak in code so I don't get removed. So I put together a bunch of research for everybody. We're just gonna go through all this to get everybody up to speed so that you can have the intellectual defense to prevent your injury by subscribing to the dominant narrative in the Western medical mindset. So I'm gonna move rather quickly here. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to send them to me. So secondary bacterial pneumonia drove many of the Cvd unalives. And it says here at the Northwestern Medicine, Feinberg School of Medicine, it says affecting almost half the patients. That's a huge number, right? So let's move on now to the National Institute of Health. We're in the news release section in 2008. Bacterial pneumonia caused most of the unalivings in 1918 influenza pandemic. Another name, of course, called the Spnsh Fu. Again, I have to talk this way so I avoid the AI detection. So it says here, highlighted for you, most victims succumb to bacterial pneumonia following the influenza infection from the virus. So a couple of comparisons that are very important. We never really hear much about them, so let's move on here. So now we're just going to look at a medical journal called New Microbes. This was released, an evaluation of evaluation of the bacterial contamination of the face dinghies. And the reason why I'm posting all of this is because there's a lot of misinformation reported by the government sources to hide all of this very important data. So of the 175 masks tested, over 471 bacterial isolates were detected among 9 total species. So we're going to see how this is actually creating the bacterial pneumonia because of the constant reintroduction of the bacteria from the face thingy and the back pressure forcing the bacteria deep into the lungs. Thus, that's why most of these people passed away from the bacterial pneumonia in both the Cvd and the Spu of 1918. So we're at the Cambridge University in the Journal of Antimicrobial Stewardship and Healthcare Epidemiology. This one's called Bacterial Contamination on Personnel 2022. So this one goes into a little more detail. Bear with me while I read this all aloud. High contamination and resistance rates were found for gram-negative bacteria. So both a high concentration and a high resistance rate. Okay, so that underlines why we're seeing a lot of close to half and more than half of people who are being unalived are actually being unalived because of this and not the original illness. Among them, 60% were resistant to at least one antibiotic. So again, it makes a lot of sense as to why we're seeing these numbers back in 1918 as well as 2019. Are often contaminated with multiple organisms, including potentially pathogenic bacteria and antibiotic-resistant gram-negative organisms. So it just underlines the importance of coming to terms with this reality. Let's move on. So now let's look at the culture from way back in 1918 to today. Of course, it's the same people in charge, right? This is a long-term campaign conducted by ancient royal families whom I have spoken about in the past. And we see that in both instances, there's a high level of face thingy usage, which is why there's a high level of bacterial pneumonia, because of the high levels of antibiotic resistant bacteria being cultured by the warmth and moisture from the mask into our lungs, overloading the ability of our immune system to handle all of the cultured bacteria. And that's why we're seeing way higher numbers. It has everything to do with the face thingy. And in other papers, I've also determined and documented for everyone how the face thingy, because of the microplastic inhalation due to the zero pressure or the back pressure environment of the face cover. They found also that these microplastics cause a higher likelihood of long COVID as well as more severe COVID. So now we're going to go into the reality, once again, recovered deep within yoga meditation. I will again just demonstrate the power of yoga meditation for all people to be equipped with this wisdom. So we're at the National Museum of American History. Power from the People, Rural Electrification Brought More Than Lights. This was released in 2016. It says here that by the 1920s, most cities and towns in America received electricity from either privately owned or municipal utility companies. So right around the time of the Splu from Spain, it's a misnomer because it was actually a similar worldwide pandemic. So a lot of the people in Italy, Spain, the United States were affected, and it has everything to do with alternating current. So now let's go into, we're in the biomedical journal available at the National Library of Medicine. This one's called The Influence of Electromagnetic Fields on the Circadian Rhythm, Implications for Human Health and Disease. So we're taking a multidisciplinary approach here in combining all of this wisdom to formulate the true rendition, as opposed to receiving the dominant narrative from the TV, which is totally false. So it says here that severe disruption of the circadian rhythm increases inflammation, which can induce fatigue, fever, and flu-like symptoms. Very important. In a fraction of the population, worsening existing symptoms in older and diseased individuals. We saw, once again, most of the people who succumbed to the COVID, as well as in the 1918, they were of older age, as well as over 90% of them in many cases who were being unalived by the COVID had pre-existing conditions. And so this paper is just saying that they're worsening existing symptoms in diseased individuals, leading up to periodic spikes of chronic diseases and infections. So that's very in line with the rendition that I'm explaining and providing for everybody today to liberate them from the dominant narrative reported by the world's richest and oldest families. So we're at Psychology Today. an unsuspecting link to sleep deprivation and stress. So we're going into the serious effect that was reported on the TV, even though it was kind of a misdirection. So we scroll down here. EMF radiation also affects when you wake up due to the disruptions in the circadian rhythms. So the circadian rhythms, as a result, being disrupted as a result of the EMF, causes a lot of different issues in the body. So now let's look into, and these issues are having to do with the immune response. So now we're in another journal here, PubMed again. So evidence for a connection between corona and exposure to radiofrequency radiation. So we're just kind of pontificating here. Morphological changes in the immune system, in the blood formation, rouleau. It impairs microcirculation in the microblood vessels, which can be very dangerous. Alters hemoglobin levels, leading to hypoxia, which is an immune suppression. Amplifies immune system dysfunction, immune suppression, autoimmunity, and hyperinflammation, which are all things that we see with the COVID, especially people who have a hard time with it. Increases cellular oxidative stress, the production of free radicals, resulting in vascular injury and organ damage. Again, we saw a lot of vascular injury with the COVID, as well as organ failure, leading to multiple casualties. So, just some interesting evidence here. Okay, so the Spnsh Fu, back in 1918, again, around 1920, just a little synopsis. It's a bit of a misnomer because it was a global pandemic similar to 2019. Further cases recorded in France, Germany, United Kingdom, the United States. Earliest documented case was in March 1918 in the state of Kansas, exactly where they're putting up all these AC power lines, like in the history we went over just before. Here's another one, history of retailing and consumption, rural electrification of the British Empire, power transmission, prior electricity, various systems had to be powered across large distances, all happening around 1900s and 1920. So this is an excerpt from the Wikipedia article. Very first AC line was put into service in 1885 in Italy. And let's see. Italy. The new estimates of the unalives from Italy was around 400,000, so that makes a lot of sense. Nice correlation here. And there was the British AC systems, as well as Germany and the United States. So we see Germany, 260,000. Over 50 million people worldwide. And just like we see with the COVID, most of the unalives take place in Western countries. Why? Because of the high level of AC current, as well as wireless communication technologies like Wi-Fi, cell phone, 5G, 4G. So a lot of people, a lot of casualties here. And so I threw this in just as to really furnish your minds. There's commonalities between COVID and radiation injury, another very interesting facet. A striking feature of the immune dysregulation, progression of disease, and mechanisms of organ damage in COVID, similar to biological responses of ionizing radiation, which is also very similar to non-ionizing radiation. An important factor to keep in mind: similarity of the inflammatory response, organ damages caused by CoV and radiation offer an opportunity for possible CoV interventions. And this is exactly how I've been able to prevent the CoV with this wisdom. There is a wealth of data, experience from the field of radiation biology for the development of mitigations that target induced dysregulation of inflammation, lung fibroids, another CoV, vascular damage, another CoV, that may lead to multi-organ failure in a similar fashion to CoV. So we see a lot of commonalities, a lot of correlations. Okay, so now I have a interview with this gentleman, Dr. Robert Brown. He's a radiologist from the University of San Diego, partner of radiology. We're in the National Library of Medicine, Integrative Medicine, a clinician's journal. Dr. Robert Brown, EMR exposure, and the CoV. The title of this one, Synchrony versus Synergy. A very interesting paper, if you have time to read it. It's quite insightful. I just highlighted a couple of key factoids for us to examine together today. EMF, like many other toxins, causes oxidative stress, which brings the damage right down to the cellular level, which is why we see a lot of these CoV stuff happening on the cellular level with the epithelial lining and all kinds of stuff in the kidneys and the liver. If the cell is under stress, then it doesn't function properly, and you can extrapolate that to the organ systems, which is exactly what we saw in the CoV. Eventually, the entire organism will become damaged because the individual cells are stressed. That's exactly what we've seen. Dr. Brown, our exposure to EMFs keeps increasing. The introduction of human-generated EMF was all the way back in the 1800s, primarily in the early 1900s, as we went over, when telegraph and appliances were installed. People got sick back then too, Dr. Brown says. People who lived near the telegraph lines got sick with a condition they used to call neurasthenia. Okay, so now they call it, electrosensitivity, or they call it all kinds of different names. When they put up these lines around the world, more and more people got sick because of the electrical lines also generate EMF due to the alternating current, which is what I wrote about in my paper available at satvananda.org called The Dipole Affectation of Alternating Current in Human Microbiology. So check out that article. Let's continue on here. And so we've increased the usage of higher frequencies to generate methods of wireless communication. We have really polluted the environment with frequencies that are affecting our physiology on the cellular level. Each time they open up a new band of communication, it is affecting us in some way, and it's causing people to get sick. And they hide it with the CoV or the Spv from 1918, okay? So the reason why I'm making this video is so that you can have access to this wisdom and take proper steps rather than taking the fake steps purported by the TV with the face thingy or the fun juicies that actually does nothing but make it worse. And he goes on, especially in this country and in Western Europe, exactly where these lines were initiated in the 1900s. Many believe that the increase in hypertension, thyroid, obesity, and diabetes are all related to chronic EMF exposure, which I have talked about many times, especially on my other channel, Life Products Direct, where I go over my EMF mitigation techniques and products. Because of oxidative stress, mitochondria have become less efficient, which can lead to diabetes and other chronic diseases. So this is another thing that I do in my appointments. We address dysfunctional mitochondria and how to reproduce those mitochondria and provide healing in my appointments. So if you're interested, sign up at satvananda.org. He goes on, Mr. Brown, most healthcare professionals are very hesitant to even mention CoV and EMF together. Linking the two has become somewhat of a conspiracy theory. What I've done in my talk is to look at the health effects of EMF in general and then consider how we can relate those effects to the CoV response. Seems rather like a good approach here. What does oxidative stress do in terms of our ability to fight the virus? How is our immune system in general affected by EMF? The innate immune system is affected directly by EMF and also indirectly through EMFs. by affecting the thyroid, which is a big one. EMF can also cause increased viral mutation through the formation of reactive oxygen species. So this is another aspect. We see a lot of mutation with the different variants, right, in the COVID. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm putting together here for everybody that's you're not going to be able to find anywhere else. So again, here's all the variants, immune escapes, mutations. Okay, this is making a lot of sense here, a lot of correlations. He goes on to say, my sister was an interesting study. A number of years ago, she was diagnosed with hyperthyroidism. Her primary doctor sent her to the endocrinologist, who repeated the lab work and said, yes, you have this. And so he offered either ablation with radioactive iodine or surgery, which you want to not do that. You want to schedule an appointment with me because I've had multiple successes with these conditions. Okay, so she asked about her options. It was soon after I got a 4 a.m. conference where I had learned about the EMF, and I said to her I wouldn't do either of them. Just like I said, just wait and see what happens for now. She repeated 6 months later, she was still hyperthyroid, and the endocrinologist said, you really need to do something about this. So she called me, and she asked, what does she think Dr. Brown she should do? So he responds, where's your Wi-Fi router? Is it in your bedroom? And she said, yes, it is. Why don't you move it down into the basement and then give yourself a couple months to let your thyroid gland rest and then repeat the lab work? So she told her endocrinologist of Dr. Brown's idea that the thyroid gland was reacting to the Wi-Fi router. My sister said he was incredulous and most likely laughed in her face because that's what every doctor has done to me. I'm sure he must have thought I was a wacko, but he had no choice but to agree to wait on the treatment plan. When my sister went back to have her labs repeated, her thyroid levels had completely normalized with no treatment at all. And of course, this is a singular case, so it might not reflect other people's experiences. So I have some products that I've developed using ancient modalities of the Vedic arts, and they're quite simple and very effective. So this is my Etsy. I have some simple copper cell phone stickers, as well as bigger mega shields. So these are extremely effective for cell phones, Wi-Fi routers, transmission devices of any kind. And here's a big one that I developed specifically for Wi-Fi routers. It's a little more expensive, but it's because I use 24K gold. So you place this in front of the Wi-Fi router, in between you and the router, and it completely dismantles the harmful waves. So yeah, check out this Life Products Direct on Etsy if you're interested in saving yourself from the COVID or the thyroid or whatever. Okay, and so now we're going to go into more things here that just going to really flesh out these ideas. So there's a lot of people who never got COVID, right? Like myself and many of my friends and family. So how can that be possible if we've spent time among the infected, right? That's because it's what my friend Aurora, my beautiful friend Aurora, calls a technosomatic virus or condition. It's not so much due to infection rather than it is the immunosuppression due to EMF. Okay, that's essentially what that means. So there's a lot of research about why people don't get it, and they're trying to tell you, it's because of this obscure gene, which could be true as it's based on some forms of exercise and the genetic level, but it's just to give you an idea of what's going on here. So here's another interesting facet. We're in the Frontiers Journal of Psychology. What psychological factors may make individuals believe they're infected? It shows that females report higher nocebo effects compared to males. So the nocebo is an extremely important aspect here. and confirmation of COVID infection status, reporting lung symptoms in a population-based birth cohort. We're gonna try to finish up here. Negative expectations of long-term symptoms following acute COVID infection could increase anticipatory anxiety, in turn contribute to symptoms experienced. They found in multiple studies suggest that COVID area is unavoidable breeding ground for possible nocebo effects. So a lot of the things that we saw on the TV or reported to us are from these nocebo effects from a negative psychology. So it says, like COVID, nocebo effects appear to be more common in women, just like the other study, and in people with high anxiety and depression, which is a sign of nutrient deficiency. So again, we're seeing that a lot of the COVID people who had a rough time or passed away had a severe nutrient deficiency, which is I've gone all over in my previous papers. So if you're interested in that, you can schedule an appointment at sapanada.org if you need help. One study found that certainty of being infected with COVID and anxiety were associated with perceived severity of acute COVID symptoms, which again the authors attributed to the nocebo effect. All right, guys, well, thank you again. It's good to see you all, my friends. I hope you can share this video and explain this to the others, because a lot of people need a lot of help since they've been totally hijacked by the television and the propaganda and the misinformation coming from the government and the corporations. So yeah, send me any questions if you have, and I'll see you in the next time. Thank you.